petals, kisses, and cake. The apple blossom trees in the castle courtyard bloomed with the lightest of pink petals, and sparkled with shimmering silver baubles, reflecting the sun brilliantly. Garlands of wisteria and gardenia draped over the stone wall at the foot of the castle's ground staircase, which was strewn with pink and red rose petals. 100 attendants, fitted in the finest garments of deep blue edged and silver trim, stood alongside the castle's main gate, ready to greet the royal wedding guests who were now starting to pour into the courtyard. It seemed the entire world was now assembled by the old well, waiting to see the king's beautiful new bride, a distinguished beauty who seemed to magically appear from legend and myth, the beautiful daughter of the renowned maker of mirrors. I think that said renowned maker of mirrors. The courtyard was bursting with royalty from neighboring kingdoms, all awaiting for the wedding to commence. The queen stood alone in her chamber, staring at the reflection in the mirror, which looked back at her rather nervously. No woman could have her life so completely changed and not expect some level of anxiety. She was marrying the man she loved, becoming a mother to his daughter, and she was to be the queen of these lands. Queen. She should be happy, but something about the mirror she was holding filled her with a horrid sense of dread that she could not account for. Verona, the queen's lady in waiting, cleared her throat to announce her presence, then rushed into the chamber. Verona's bright eyes, the colors of the sky, beamed with happiness. The lady glowed with light that seemed to come straight from her core, illuminating her fair skin and glinting off her milk and honey hair. The queen smiled weakly as Verona embraced her. The queen had never been surrounded by such beauty, nor had she known happiness. Not until she came to this court, and now here was a woman she loved as a sister. Snow White followed Verona into the queen's chambers. She was a lovely little creature of 3 or 4 with a joyous bounce into her step, and an extinguishable sparkle of happiness twinkling in her eyes. Her skin was fairer than a virgin snowfall, her tiny, pouty lips redder than the deepest ruby, with hair as black as a raven's feathers. She was like a delicate porcelain doll who come to life, especially this day, in her little red silk velvet dress. Verona held Snow by her tiny hand, hoping it would discourage the little girl from fidgeting with her beaded on her delicate dress. Snow, my dear, stop pulling on your beads. You'll ruin your dress before the wedding even commences. The queen smiled and said, "Hello, my pretty little bird of a girl. You look lovely today." Snow blushed, hid behind Verona's skirts, picking at her stepmother. "Doesn't your new mother look pretty today, Snow?" Verona said. Snow nodded her head. "Then tell her, dear," coaxed Verona as she bent down smiling at the coy little girl. "You look very pretty too, Mama," said Snow, melting the queen's heart. The queen opened her arms to the child with Verona's gentle encouragement. Snow moved forward to accept the queen's embrace. Snow was a little bird of a girl, such a lovely creature. It tugged at her stepmother's heart as if the child's beauty hurt her deeply. As she took Snow into her arms, she was filled with a love she had never known. She thought the weight of that love might cause her heart to burst, and in a secret place buried deep within her heart she wished someone she could absorb the beauty of this child, so that herself would truly be beautiful. "You do look quite striking, my queen," Verona said, smiling knowingly as if she had seen into the queen's insecure heart. The queen again examined herself in the mirror, and she saw something of her mother looking back at her. She remembered back to the day the king had remarked on this resemblance. Perhaps he was right. It was possible that she did look like her mother, but she never seen it before until now, standing in the same wedding gown her mother had worn on her own wedding day. The dress was of the deepest red, and somehow the years had done nothing to mute its brilliance. It was embroidered with lavish patterns of black birds, and jeweled with smoky black crystals that sparkled in the light. The queen's heart leaped, then quickly sank. How wonderful it would have been to have her mother here with her today. How wonderful it would have been to have had her here at all. The queen knew her mother only for the painting that was decorated in her father's home. But as a child she would stare at it, in awe of the woman's beauty, deeply in love with her, and yearning for her embrace. She would imagine her mother she never knew taking her into her arms, dancing in circles, the jewels that adorned both their dresses, catching the light while they laughed. The queen broke away from her reverie to look at Snow, who was playing with the tassels of the curtains at the far end of the room. For all the joy in her eyes and in her heart, the queen knew that the poor child's feelings of loss. There must have been an emptiness inside the girl, an inconsolable feeling. The queen frowned, knowing that there was nothing she could ever do to replace the king's first wife. How could Snow possibly love another woman such as much as she cared for her own mother? How, especially, could she care for someone like the queen, whose life up until now had best been a string of mediocre achievements surrounded by boredom and blankness? As the child played and Verona tended to her, the queen minded drifted further, to the day she had met the king in her father's mirror shop. Her father's reputation of an expert craftsman had grown so wide, and his artisanship so well respected, that the king himself felt it his duty to visit he who had been called the finest craftsman of the land. After examining her father's wares and being gifted a mirror of his own, he was ushered outside where the queen was fetching a bucket of water from an old well. The king ordered his attendants to halt. "Who is this girl?" the king asked. "The mirror maker's daughter, sire," an attendant replied. The king made his way over to her, took her hand. She gasped, dropped the bucket to his feet, soaking his boots right through his stockings. The queen looked up nervously, expecting a harsh rebuke, perhaps even imprisonment in his dungeons, but the king simply smiled, and then he spoke. She thought he was teasing her when he told her how lovely she was, that all of her father's creations, she was the finest. "Please, don't say such things to me, Your Majesty," she said, awkwardly performing something between a curtsy or a bow as she struggled to avoid his pale blue eyes. And why shouldn't I? You must be the fairest maiden in the land. Nay, surely you are the fairest of all the land I had ever known. It is no wonder your father makes mirrors to reflect your beauty. The queen had struggled not to look into his face of the man who ruled over everything from the kingdom to the very well from which she was fetching the water. Then, as quickly as he had come, he had gone. When he ventured off, he promised a quick return. The queen was bewildered and confused. How could the king possibly have felt this way toward her, out of all the maidens in the land? Her. The queen's father smirked. Clearly you have bewitched him, daughter, he said to the queen, watching the king's convey ride off, disappearing as it drifted below the hill, only to re-emerge into the next incline, seemingly smaller and certainly farther away. She sat in her small spare room that evening, gazing out the window at star-speckled sky. Could the king be thinking of her this night? She mused as she gazed in the stars, imagining her mother looking over her, flying through the darkness, the jewels of her dress sparkling, camouflaging her from the blanket of the central lights that twinkled in the night sky. She imagined that she was flying alongside her mother, gazing at a dying sun and seeing others burst to life. She was surrounded by luminescent stardust, floating in the darkness dotted with the brilliant iridescent. It was the memory of the king that brought her back to the humble room. She was sure he wouldn't come back for her. Soon after the king's departure, the queen suffered a new loss, her father. In the days following her father's death, her own life was infused with light. It was though in leaving this world he brought all the darkness with him and left her in a place where she might be able to find, if not love and happiness, at least something more than she had up until now. On the day her father died, before word had traveled to the king or anyone else in the land, the queen brought every one of his mirrors out into the light. She hung the smaller ones in a giant maple tree on the grounds. It was remarkable. The mirrors swayed in the breeze, catching the sunlight, reflecting the most magnificent and unusual ways and beams of light dancing upon the maple leaves, reflection like tiny playful spirits, dotted in the house and on the grounds. Soon travelers from far and wide came to see the beautiful tribute she was making for her father, including the king. Your eyes are sparkling brilliantly. Your eyes are sparkling brilliantly in the light reflected from your father's mirrors, said the king, standing underneath the dazzling sun. The bright light was shining into her dark eyes, turning them a light caramel color. The king told her she was enchanting. A terror seized her. Enchanting? What if her beauty was just that, as her father had claimed, an enchantment? Should she deceive such a kind, loving man? Or was it possible that she really possessed some kind of beauty? The king made his way inside her house, and unsure of what to do, she followed him. "Is this a portrait of you?" the king asked, looking at only a decoration of the living space, the tiny home. "That was my mother, sire. I never knew her. The resemblance is uncanny. I wish I was as beautiful as she was. You look almost exactly like her. You must see it." The queen just looked at the portrait in wonderment, wishing his words were sincere, but unable to take them as anything from flattery from someone who must have needed something from her. Her father's estate, perhaps? The remaining mirrors? Whatever it was the king wanted, it could not have been her. But over time, many visits, it seemed that she was all the king wanted. Her life began to seem like a dream, light, ethereal, and breathtaking. The king's people embraced her. Around fires of the melody of minstrel harp, the entire kingdom, and even beyond, sang of the beautiful daughter of the renowned maker of mirrors, who had stolen the heart of the king. Verona interrupted the queen's thoughts, bringing her back to the present. The court, in fact, the kingdom, is filled with throngs wishing to glimpse the new queen. We must make our way, the queen smiled. And what a fine trail we will make walking in procession. She marked as she took Verona and Snow by the hands and proceeded to the wedding celebration. Verona had not exaggerated. Huge crowds gathered outside, and the queen could see this through the small window that dotted the walls. She descended the spiral stairway among the crowd. Sorry, you guys, taking a break, I'm nervous. The queen recognized the king, most beloved uncle, Marcus, who caught a glimpse of her through the window and smiled. He was a large man, unkempt, a jolly looking. The queen remembered that his wife, Vivian, had recently fallen ill, and yet he was here for his nephew. He was standing with his dear friend, the court's huntsman, who was a handsome man, well built with dark eyes, hair, and beard. There were kings and escorts from far and wide, and the king's three strange cousins, who were dressed oddly, stuck closely together. They smiled in illusion and tilted their heads thoughtfully as one. The queen observed their weird behavior as she passed by another window, this one shaped like a huge letter X. The entire castle was warmly lit with candlelight, glowing and ethereal, conjuring the images of the queen's favorite holiday, the winter solace. There were so many candles lit in the room that felt hot, too hot. The queen's face flushed and her head spun. Her heart pounded as she walked down the aisle. Toward the king. He waited by the old well, which he had ordered to move from the mirror maker's home to the castle in the courtyard, so that he might always remember where he first saw the queen. With Verona's help, the queen steadied herself and focused her attention on the king, who was smiling brilliantly. He was beautiful, but not even more so in his formal attire. With his dark hair and paled eyes, his glistening sword hung at his side, and his tall boots shined in the candlelight. The queen felt as if she was floating in a dream. Women with faces painted white as sheets, cheeks and lips of the colors of red roses, were peering at her as she glided past them. She attempted not to read the looks of their faces, instead focusing her gaze on her bridegroom. But surely they were smiling condescendingly at her as she passed, some of them with little bundles of jasmine in their hands, the scent intoxicating, slightly overwhelming. Not only would they be jealous of her marriage, but they would also think, why her? Of all the ladies in the kingdom, why a peasant girl? There would be whispers accusing her of enchantment, and evil eyes cursing her. She finally reached the king, who stood by the well, and he took her by the hand. Perhaps he sensed her dizziness and her bulking knees, but her heart finally slowed in pounding when she locked eyes with him. The ceremony began. Verona and Snow stood off to the side. The officiant stepped forward. The king and queen exchanged words of love, promises, rings, and finally, a kiss. Bliss. The crowd erupted into cheers, and the king had not caught her, the queen would have collapsed. There was a flurry, then a shower of pink rose petals illuminating the shafts of the light streaming through the stained glass windows, casting an unearthly charm over the entire castle. She was in love. Beautiful, the queen. Everyone she encountered remarked on her beauty. She tried not to let their compliments confound her, but when she thought of it, it made her already dizzy. It made her already dizzy head swim. The day whirled in by a pink haze. Her hand must have been kissed 1,000 times, and she never danced so much in her entire life, not even as a child with her nanny. Oh, Nanny, how she wished she was here to see her on this day. She remembered something Nanny had told her in her father's kitchen on a sun-drenched morning while eating strawberries and cream. You are beautiful, my dear, truly. Do not ever forget that, even if I'm not here to remind you. Not here? But where would you go? To dance with your mother in the heavens, dear. One day you will join us, but not for many years to come. No, Nanny, stay here. Dance with me now. I don't want you to leave, not ever. And so they danced, spinning in circles, laughing, enjoying the sun streaming through the windows. And that was one of the many ways Nanny would cheer her up. Spirits, strawberries, cream, and dance. She must do that with Snow now. The thought had made her feel like a light and protected. She would be happy with the king and his beautiful, delicate little flower of a girl. She would make the child her own daughter and love her. She would tell her how beautiful she was every day of her life, and they would dance together and laugh like mother and daughter. They would be mother and daughter. She walked to the edge of the ballroom floor where Snow and Verona were standing as they watched the lords and ladies dance in circles, like blossoms floating in a lovely summer breeze. The queen scooped the child up and took her into her arms, and brought her to the colorful swirls of ladies' dresses. She danced with the girl, pressing her tightly against her chest, feeling the surge of love again as they danced in what seemed to be a living garden of color and sound. The king joined them, and the family laughed until early morning hours. Long after the final guests had departed and retired to their rooms within the castle, exhausted and giddy after many hours of feasting and dance, the king and queen took their sleeping girl to the bedchamber. "Good night, little bird," said the queen, as she kissed Snow. The girl's cheek fell as a soft silk of the queen's lips. She felt the child to her dreams. She left the child to her dreams. She was sure they were filled with lovely ladies spinning in circles, in colorful dresses, and banners swirling all around her. The king took his new wife by the hand and led her into their chamber. The sun, now coming through the curtains, was casting an otherworldly glow. They stood there for a moment, looking at each other. Bliss. "I see you have opened my gift," the king said, looking at the mirror. The mirror was an oval shaped, beautifully oriented, gilded with serpentine designs around the perimeter, and the crown with the engraving of a headpiece fit for a queen. It was nearly perfect, but something about it had made her feel the same uneasiness that had shaken her before the ceremony. Her chest tightened, and the room suddenly felt oppressingly confining. "What's the matter, my love?" the king asked. The queen moved to speak but could not. "You don't like it?" he asked, looking at the crestfallen. "No, my love, I'm tired, so tired," she finally muttered, but she couldn't take her eyes off of the mirror. The king took her by the hand. The king took her by her shoulders and drew her closer, kissing her. "Of course you're exhausted, my love. It's been a terrible long day." She returned his kiss, attempting to banish all fear from her heart. She was in love, bliss, and she would allow nothing to ruin this day. Who's ready for chapter 2? I hope you guys enjoyed the first chapter. Excuse me as I was really nervous. I did stutter, but I enjoyed reading this first chapter with you guys, and let's go ahead and read chapter 2 and 3, and we'll meet on the 18th. If you guys read ahead, keep it to your guys' selves. Make sure you guys don't give no spoilers. Actually, since these chapters are a little bit shorter, let's go ahead and read to chapter 5. So chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we'll meet up on the 18th and go from there. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.